Welcome to It's All Recruiting, the show that looks at everything through the lens of recruiting. I'm your host, Jim Stroud. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of It's All Recruiting podcast. I'm your host, Jim Stroud, and with me is a very special guest talking about a kind of controversial topic. I'll let him introduce himself. Sir, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Yes, I'm Cody Merrill, and I'm founder and CEO of SocialWyze, which is a gig economy platform that helps governments pay unemployed people to do public benefit work to help them transition back in the workforce.
Nice. So we were talking just prior to this podcast about automation and how a lot of people are concerned that robots and automation will take jobs away. And we were sort of talking about what the government can do to assist those who may be displaced by all of this new technology. Can you go into that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Whenever we talk about automation displacing workers, I think it's important to address first the arguments from both camps. So in one camp, you have like a Martin Ford or an Eric Brynjolfsson or Vivek Wadhwa. There's a lot of researchers that are very concerned about the future of work. And to summarize their argument, they say, look, this time's fundamentally different, right? We have two different fronts in this battle now. We have mechanical automation and we also have intellectual automation. And if we look back historically and we expect things to continue to work the same, then we're going to be sorely disappointed and we're going to be well underprepared for the full scope of the problem. When technology is growing exponentially, so are the externalities. And then on the other side of that camp, there's like a Mark Andreessen who would say something to the effect of, despite thousands of years of people predicting the end of work, we now have more jobs than ever, despite hundreds and thousands of years of technological innovation.
Sure.
And so, I think that one of the arguments that really crystallizes the debate for me is a point that Eric Brynjolfsson, who's a researcher at MIT, he says that the best analogy is to look at horse employment. So we didn't have any horses until Columbus, and then we had horses, and then the number of horses that were being employed in a commercial capacity was growing steadily with the population of humans. And then came the railroad. And, when the railroad came about, everyone thought, okay, well, does this mean that this is the end of the horse? It's the iron horse after all.
Right.
And what we found is that it did not create the end of the commercial use for the horse. It actually grew. The commercial use for horses actually grew in tandem. And if you think about it, they aren't perfect substitutes. A railroad has a fixed track and it's good at taking people and goods long distances. Mm-hmm. But what a horse provides is a door-to-door solution for someone in town who can, have the means of transportation go any number of different paths to get to a relatively close point A to point B. And so I think if we analyze the lessons that we learned with horses, then we will realize that the automobile completely just cratered the entire market for horse employment because it was, too close of a substitute. Everything, that a horse could provide, the automobile could be better, cheaper, faster. You don't have to feed it and bathe it, and there's still
right.
Inputs. You have to put gasoline in it, and just like robots and factories, there's going to be some maintenance. But a factory that's, where the work's primarily being performed by robots and the maintenance is being performed by humans is going to employ far fewer humans than, the factories of previous decades.
Sure, sure,
So,
sure. It sort of
so
reminds me of 19th century, well, not 19th century. Yeah, I think it was 19th century. The Luddite movement, if you're familiar with that, where new inventions like the steam engine and the cotton gin were displacing skilled workers, because you could have one of these machines and someone who isn't highly skilled can still do the work that those skilled workers were. And so a lot of people were afraid of that, and they would break into these warehouses and destroy the machines, thinking that that would protect their job. But it's basically progress. As you said, new technology comes into place, things change. Doesn't necessarily mean that people will go away, or rather the work will go away, just that it will change, it'll morph.
yeah, absolutely. I think that the Luddites are a great historical example of, different factions engaging with this concept of human displacement differently. And even before that, there's some arguments from Jean-Jacques Rousseau about criticizing scientific progress, arguing that humans are happier living a more simple agrarian life. So
there might be something to that, because all the different examples of tech addiction. When I read that people are happier when they're spend more time in nature, he may have a point. Just put the phones down for a minute and take a walk through the woods.
Yeah, I think there's always an important argument for balance. But when it comes to our professional capacities, I think it's really crucial that we recognize that performing work and dignified work are extremely important components of the human condition.
Sure.
And it goes beyond just the income that it supplies, but it's also a sense of purpose. And the reality is that there are fewer and fewer tasks increasing by the day that humans can do that robots can't do, better, cheaper, and faster. And a lot of the research being performed in law firms really has no business being done by a human. A lot of diagnostics in medicine, there's AI that is seeing things that human radiologists can't see. Sure. And so there's all the types of automation that we're familiar with, that we see, the robots in the factories, but we also have to think about, in the service industry, we see a lot more self-checkout kiosks, whether it's Walmart or McDonald's, and an Amazon warehouse. That thing's roboted up to the T, delivering things, all over the place. And there's a lot of humans there, but the ratio of robot labor to human labor is increasingly going the way of the robot. So
let me ask you this then. Let me ask you this then. If robots and automation are displacing so many workers, let's say in the near future, then how do you think the government should respond to that?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of interesting proposals that are out there now. And if you listen to the Democratic debates this year compared to like 4 years previously, it's like it's almost like we're in a different universe. The way the conversations are going, and this year we have a candidate whose primary platform focus is addressing workplace displacement from automation, and that's Andrew Yang. So let's talk about his proposal, which is universal basic income. And I am absolutely a universal basic income fan. I think that it will become an inevitability. So Bain and McKinsey say that like between 20 to 33% of workers are going to be displaced by 2030. So we're going to have a massive problem on our hands where we have people who want to work, who want to contribute, who need that income, who all of a sudden don't have those things. And so, yes, some new jobs will be created, but not nearly as many as the jobs that are destroyed. And a lot of the new jobs that are created are going to be created in different markets, different cities from the ones where they've been destroyed. So we need mechanisms to kind of grease the wheels to allow people to move to those new opportunities and to allow people, income that will sustain them while they pursue training or whatever it is that they need to succeed in the digital age. And so I think that a universal basic income is always going to be part of the solution, but even the most ambitious plans are $1,000 a month. And so, $12,000 a year is enough to avoid starvation, but there's still unmet financial needs for most of the households. We live in a society today where 78% of workers are living paycheck to paycheck. And so I think that universal basic income is an efficient way of addressing this, cutting checks instead of having more bureaucracies to administer a more complex welfare system. But I also feel that universal basic income does not do anything or much of anything to address the need that humans have for meaningful work. So that kind of leads me to these universal public employment initiatives. Mm-hmm. And these take all different types of flavors. If we look back historically in the Great Depression, if we looked at FDR style work programs with the Public Works Administration, Works Progress Administration, where government said, hey, it's costing us a lot of money when these people don't have work. They need help to survive. And there's good things in the community that they can do that we can pay them to do. So it's this kind of realization that we can kind of help solve several of our own problems. And, it worked well. It was what the country needed. But that doesn't mean that's the best way to implement it. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. And I appreciate your argument. I've heard universal basic income debated several different ways. I've heard different arguments pro and against. And just to get your take on a couple of things. So when you say cut the checks for the people who need additional assistance, knowing that it's not the ultimate cure for everything, but it's a way of assisting. How do you counter the argument that you could give someone $1,000, $10,000 a month, $1 million a month, but if they historically have proven not to be good stewards of the money they have, then no matter what amount of money you give someone, they're going to mismanagement and still be in the same predicament they were before because they don't have the basic financial skills to do a budget.
Yeah, there's definitely a litany of criticisms along the lines of, hey, people really just need to be better budgeters.
Sure.
But I feel like if we focus too much on arguments in that camp, it can be alluring to make arguments where there's really no solution, right? Oh, well, hey, if the problem with the education system is parenting, then let's just blame it on the parents, and then it doesn't leave us from a policy standpoint in a situation where we can really help address the problem. And so I think that there's certainly some work that can be done for educating people on financial literacy in tandem with the universal basic income. But I think it's also really important to look at the research. And so Rutger Bregman, he's a historian and he's one of the leading voices on universal basic income. He's actually famous for his recent appearance at the Davos conference. But one of the things that he likes to highlight is that when people are in an income scarce environment, their intellectual quotient, their IQ actually drops. I believe he says it's like something to, like 13 to 15 points. And so
Being poor makes you dumber? Is that what he's saying?
yes. And
Okay.
so there's a study of like farmers, and after their crops would be harvested and they would sell it, and they would have a lot of money, and then they did a really robust analysis of their spending behavior, of cognitive tests to try to understand, is there a connection? Does just having financial security actually make you function smarter? And that answer is yes. And I think it's easier to understand the more familiar you are with low-income individuals and the stress that a financial insecurity generates. And it absorbs so much bandwidth that it's hard for them to take a lot of the logical steps that are so clear for people who have had steady employment for a considerable period of time.
And who was the author of that research you were saying? Forgive me.
I'm not. So Rutger Bregman is the guy who cited the research, but I'm not sure who the author of that study is. But
I was just curious because if he was here, I would say, if being poor makes you dumb, then how come lottery winners aren't like geniuses? Because all the lottery winners I've seen in the news, they get rich overnight, literally, and then in a few years they're broke again and worse off. So I would debate him on being poor makes you dumb. I know some poor people who are pretty smart and some rich people who are pretty stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that he would agree that there's certainly outliers, but I think the crux of his argument is that there's sort of this minimum threshold of financial security. And when you fall below that, it consumes so much of your bandwidth that if you look at it in aggregate, those people consistently make poor financial decisions.
Sure.
I think it's understandable.
Sure. Now, you mentioned about government involvement and the different programs that could facilitate universal basic income, but other things as well. If you could, what's the word I'm looking for? Extrapolate on that a bit more. But also, if you would, I would ask in advance, is there a work component to what you are proposing? So if someone were to receive an extra $1,000 a month as universal basic income, would they also have to work for it in some manner?
Yeah, so there's different initiatives. What Andrew Yang is proposing is an unconditional $1,000 a month. What somebody like Chris Hughes, who's a co-founder of Facebook and is one of the leading individuals in the Give Directly and universal basic income world, what he proposes is that everybody who's working, and there's a very loose definition of work. If you're a stay-at-home mom and you're taking care of kids, that accounts for working.
Sure.
If you're doing paintings or something, that counts as working. And then there's people who propose a wage supplement. There's a lot of concern with, you don't want to disincentivize work, right? Nobody wants to do that. And I think that, the argument that universal basic income disincentivizes work, I think that's overblown considerably. I think to some extent it does, but on micro studies, what they have found is that, individuals tend to stay in school longer, or mothers stay home with their kids longer before going back to work. These are things that, may not directly show, hey, that they're working longer, but they're not exactly bad uses of time either. They're not sitting at home abusing drugs at a higher rate. And
you make an interesting point. You make an interesting point in that. And so my question to that is, how do you measure the success of a universal basic income? Because if you say, okay, we're going to give you X amount of dollars, in perpetuity, then how do you measure what's success? I mean, if there's no endpoint, like, okay, I'm gonna give you this money, I'm gonna invest in you because you're gonna start a business, so my return is gonna be a successful business, or I'm gonna invest in you for this service and I'm gonna get a successful service. If I'm giving someone universal basic income of $1,000 a month, how do I know it's working? Or what return is the government going to get on this money besides giving out money?
Sure. So Y Combinator also has a research arm. So for people who aren't familiar, that's the most prestigious startup accelerator in the world. They also have a nonprofit arm, YC Research, and they have funded the most robust universal basic income experiment ever in the world. And so it is about to go into implementation. I know that their program is already funded, but they have a really great PDF. I think it's about 20 pages where they walk through their model and what they're hoping to achieve. So not only is it going to be the best funded, it's also going to be the best experiment. They have the most robust academic analysis that they're going to perform. And I don't want to say that I have all of their criteria, but I know certain criteria that they're examining to judge whether or not this is successful are, healthcare, educational attainment, criminal activity, whether it goes up or down. And then one of the criteria is, are they more or less engaged in the community? And then another one is, are they performing more or less work, right? So is it serving as a deterrent to work and it's actually not creating value for society? Or is it allowing people to the flexibility to pursue work that is most meaningful, or to stay in school longer, or take care of your kids, or whatever, something that's pro-social and helpful. And so for me, when I see that's the criteria that they're measuring their program from, to me, that says that, well, what I'm trying to accomplish with this gig economy platform, where local governments can pay homeless people, veterans, formerly incarcerated individuals, someone who's displaced from automation, doesn't matter the situation. If you're unemployed and you need work, there's things in your local community that you can do, whether it's beach cleanup, whether it's cleaning up public parks, whether it's working at a food bank, Habitat for Humanity, soup kitchen, reading hour at a public library. You have your choice. Whatever's meaningful to you, we will pay you to do, and we will do that immediately. And instead of the government having to create a whole lot of bureaucracies to administer and scale these programs, why not work through the existing local infrastructure of organizations that already supervise unskilled labor and turning that into public benefit?
That is really cool. I really like that idea. I've seen certain cities in the news that have been overrun with homeless, and because of that, there are like needles in the street and other things in the trash, that kind of thing. So if I were a government administrator and I wanted to use your program and say, hey, we have some really bad streets, I want to use your program to get people to clean up the streets, so to speak, because it'll be cheaper to use your program than to hire some other company. Could I do that with your product?
Yeah. So the way the product works is we would have a deal with like a local government, and they would contribute funds to a wage bank. So it could be a local government, and then local foundations could contribute money. Local corporate social responsibility initiatives could contribute money. So that money sits in the wage bank. And then, if you're homeless or in some situation where you really need employment, well, you probably have a mobile phone. And if you don't have a mobile phone, then you're probably not high enough functioning person for me to be able to help. This isn't a solution that can help all people. Sure. This is a solution that can help people who want to work,
sure,
and have the wherewithal to do so. So they get on there, and then, the hope is that they can choose between 5 different options at any one given point in time that are within a 2-mile radius of where they live. And if you think about it, a lot of nonprofits are located in these low income areas. So I want to do what I can to try to mitigate that transportation burden. More gigs that are posted on our platform, the easier it will be for them to get where they need to be to do the work. But, an ideal scenario is like in San Francisco. Why not, pay homeless people to clean the human feces and heroin needles?
Exactly what I was thinking. Exactly what I was thinking.
And in LA, they're actually paying homeless people now $15 an hour to help clean Skid Row. And wow. So there's these initiatives all over the country, that are particularly homeless work initiatives. And it started in Albuquerque with former Mayor Richard Berry. He has a great TED Talk on it. There's other content online, but he had a tremendously successful program that grew year over year under his tenure. And, it's just this basic premise: pay people that are costing a lot of money when they don't have work to do work that needs to be done in the community. And he says in his TED Talk, if there's a mayor out there somewhere that has no work that needs to be done in their community, can I have their phone number, because I need some advice? And so, I think we all understand that there's no shortage of work that needs to be done, and there's no shortage of people who are costing taxpayers a lot of money who don't have work. Let's marry the two. And for me, a far more scalable way to do that is to incorporate software. So instead of a city driving a van around, picking up people here or there, and then paying them in an envelope of cash at the end of the day, if you're engaging with them digitally on their mobile phone, and more people globally have mobile phones than toothbrushes. So that's definitely the best delivery mechanism. It's clearly, if you're trying to enact change at scale and you're really trying to help people with upward mobility, the answer is through the mobile device. Sure. And so with their mobile device, they can access all those different opportunities where they can go do public benefit work in their community. And then all of that comes together and it comes back to their resume. So it's similar to, it's like an Uber driver where, I've done 490 trips and I'm a 4.9 star worker and I have these stickers. Well, for us, we're trying to help these individuals transition back into private employment, and we're trying to help them demonstrate, that they're in clear mind, that they're ready to work, that they're capable of getting along with their supervisors. So to have that digital resume and, to be a homeless person and then to be able to walk into a job interview and say, hey, over the past 4 weeks, I've worked 65 hours on public benefit projects and I'm a 4.9 star worker, then that completely changes how the homeless person thinks about themselves.
I like that.
Completely changes how how the private employer views them. If you're hiring someone in the moderate to low skilled fields, you probably understand that, they might have a criminal record or they might have some things about their past that, are non-desirable. But
Sure.
But what's important is, are they getting up in the morning? Are they being productive? Are they showing that they really want to improve their life situation? And if they can prove that, then that's just a complete game changer. And another really important component of our platform is we also have our workers list their skills. So in the white collar world, if I'm trying to hire someone for a specific role, I can go on LinkedIn and I can, query and come up with a list of 5 candidates that perfectly meet my needs. But if I'm a low to moderate skilled employer and I'm trying to systematically identify candidates in my local market who can do the work that I need, it's less clear how to go about doing that and sort of replicating that LinkedIn type of experience. But with the SocialWyze platform, private employers can query our system. They can find people who have high star ratings, who are doing good work. And you can see, oh, hey, I want someone who has a good attitude, is doing good work, but they also have 2 years of basic carpentry skills, or they have their commercial driver's license, or maybe they're a yoga instructor. Like whatever that skill is,
right.
Why not give them a tool to where they can query and find those people? And for me, with my platform, our vision isn't to try to get people on there and then keep them in public benefit work forever. The hope is to get them.
Just the means to start. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Now I see we're coming up on time, and I don't want anyone to miss out on the opportunity to connect with you. If someone wanted to connect with you and learn more about your platform, maybe request a demo, how can they go about that?
Sure. Yeah. I would say just shoot me an email, Cody@socialwyze.com. That's SocialWyze.com. And I would be more than happy to follow up with you. Right now, we've got a lot going on as a company trying to get this off the ground. And, we have some pilot opportunities that we're tremendously excited about, particularly out in Hawaii. But I'm always trying to fill up the hopper. I'm always trying to make connections with new cities and, start that sales process, because this is a universal problem. There's cities all over the world that have this problem, that want more productivity out of homeless individuals, low-income community in general. And the problem's going to get worse as automation displaces more and more workers. So,
definitely.
The world is our market, but we have to start slow, demonstrate efficacy at a small level, and then move up from there.
Well, I wish you well in your enterprise. I especially like the take of putting the homeless to work. That is, I really like that, and I like everything that you mentioned before about far as how your platform works and how it could benefit society overall. So, kudos to you for that, sir, and thank you for your time. I do appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jim. It was a pleasure being on the show.
Thank you 1,000 times. Thank you for listening to my show. If you love what you heard, hate what you heard, or don't know what you just heard, I want to know about it. If you would, go to my blog over at jimstroud.com and leave me a note. I would so much appreciate that. All right. Until next time. Bye-bye.